Support for the Lancast is provided by Winding Way Books, Pennsylvania College of Art and Design, Lapp Structures, and listeners like you.
Welcome to the Lancast. I'm David Moulton.
And I'm Keith Slesser. This episode we caught up via Skype with idea man Aaron Gotwalt.
Aaron co-founded the Twitter utility CoTweet, which took him on a journey from a scrape-by startup to a multi-million-dollar company.
The Twitter ecosystem, when we started working in it, was just barely evolved to the point that people were beginning to realize that this was a problem. And so there were a couple other companies that were looking at this similar issue at the same time. I think we were probably the first out on the market, although that's one of those things where like the market was so blurry and tiny at that time that it's really hard to tell.
Growing up in the Lancaster area, Aaron tells us about the differences between his hometown and San Francisco.
You know, the honest truth is when you're in San Francisco, you can tell that it's summer when the park is full of bouncy castles. It's just totally true. Like you could do like a bouncy castle cruise where if you had a cute kid along, you could probably go into every single one of them and not get stopped.
Enjoy the conversation.
Aaron, welcome to the Lancast.
Hi. What are you supposed to say in response to that? Like, hey, what's up? Thanks for having me.
Yeah, that works.
Yeah.
So we're having you on here. Talk about CoTweet is one of the things I want to talk about here. Can you tell us a little bit about what that is, how it got started?
Okay, so I think in order to talk about CoTweet, you got to start at sort of how and where we came from. Roughly 3 years ago, I was working at a company based in Harrisburg called And Culture, and I had been working on a bunch of side projects while I was there. And one of them was a project. I realized when you work in an ad agency, it's a whole bunch of guys who have issues with other guys and their T-shirts in the same office, and I got called out one day for wearing the same T-shirt more than once in a week, which I guess is a cardinal sin in an ad agency. I didn't know this until that point. I had just done laundry. It was nothing intentionally, fashion faux pas centered, but it was a faux pas, and I thought, I should write down what I'm wearing, and that way I don't lose track of it, and I don't wear the same thing more than once a week, and then I don't get called out like this ever again, because it was very embarrassing. And then I thought, well, if I have this problem, then maybe other people have it. And then I started working on a project that allowed you to take a picture of what you're wearing every day. And you could tag the items that were in your outfits, and then your friends could rate your outfits anonymously. Anonymous is very important there because it makes for really funny social dynamics when you realize that everybody hates what you're wearing, but you're not sure who it is. And This project, it kind of snowballed and eventually became something. Ultimately, I quit And Culture to go chase it. I felt like I needed to go and take a risk and build something that I was building. I was doing this with my business partner, Kyle Sullenberger. And so we started working on this thing. And a couple months later, I came out to the Facebook F8 conference, which is their developer conference in 2008. And I remember this moment very, very specifically. The guys from Zynga were up there and they were speaking. Zynga created, I think, all the Farmville ones, all those games. They said, don't even worry about building great software or great applications. Just build things that go for viral growth. Like you don't need to worry about anything. Just make it viral. And then Sean Parker, I don't know if you guys have seen The Social Network. Mm-hmm. Sean Parker gets up there and he's like, F those guys, build great things. And I'm like, yeah, I can get behind that. And so I walked up to him afterwards, along with everybody else who was in the entire auditorium. And I waited for about 40 minutes. I actually walked away and I came back, and there was still a pile of people. Eventually I got up to him, and he was tired and I was tired, and he didn't look like he wanted to be talking to anybody. And so I was like, I handed him my card. I'm like, hey, I'm building something. I'd love to talk to you. And I walked off. I didn't say anything else. And I thought, I blew my chances, and I went and had a drink, and, that was kind of the end of that trip. Like 6 weeks later, he called me back. and it's me, some guy from central Pennsylvania, and this kid who's, well, I guess he's not a kid, he's older than me, internet wonderkind, who, he was the original CEO of Napster, and he was the CEO of Facebook, and, did a whole bunch of stuff. And then it's me. And so I'm on the phone and not able to breathe, which was really funny. And he liked it a lot. And so he introduced us to some people in New York in the fashion world. And I met him for the first time sitting in the lobby of one of these very important people in the fashion world's offices. And we talked things through really quickly. He's like, he laid out how it was going to go. And we walk into the office, and he's like, and this is my best friend, Aaron. And I was like, or something like that. And anyway, it's funny. I realize that that actually happens a lot in business, but I think I wasn't sort of a fast awakening to that whole thing. Anyway, he introduced us to some really great people, and did a lot to try and help us get that going. And ultimately, the project got a little bit stalled, and we were trying to figure out what to do to make it unstuck. And this was probably September or October of 2008. And we had been going back and forth to New York a lot to go to social media events, to talk about our project, to pitch it to really anything with 3 legs or fewer. And Kyle and I were using this Twitter account to promote it and to talk to other people. And we kept on stepping on each other's toes, and I would get very angry at him, which is very easy to do because when you know him, you get angry at him. So we were talking about this, and we decided we wanted to kind of do a palate cleanser, just get away from working at Facebook stuff for a while and do something new and fresh and light. And so we decided to build this project. Originally, it was called Twansmit, which is the worst software name in the entire world. It's like Transmit, but it's Twitter oriented.
Like Baby Bear. Okay.
Yeah, it was horrible. And I got a lot of crap for that. And but ultimately, it was the thing that became CoTweet. And we built it to solve our own problems, where we had these workflow problems with sharing a Twitter account, where I didn't know who he was talking to, and I didn't know the conversation history with other people. So when I see a message in the inbox, I wouldn't know if this was something serious that I needed to pay attention to, or that Kyle already had it figured out. So CoTweet was built initially to just solve our own problems, which is actually very similar to what the fashion project was, which was my stupid T-shirt problem. And then for a brief bit, we thought we could run both of them, and that proved to not be the case. And then we realized that we really needed somebody to help us with the business side, and so we brought in a friend of mine, Jesse Engel, who's from Hershey, to be our CEO and kind of manage the business side while we were focused on building the product. And it kind of snowballed from there.
So now, you said CoTweet was made to handle that kind of problems. How did it solve the problems for you?
So the idea was to take something. I mean, I don't know if you use Twitter or some form of a Twitter application, but the idea was to take the things that are actually directed at you, like direct messages and replies and those sorts of things, and put them into a shared inbox view, and then to keep notes on for everyone that you're interacting with, so you can go back and say, this is what we said to this person across all of our Twitter accounts, and then. Also, we had this notion of being able to assign. So, like, if a message came into the CoTweet Twitter account, I could assign it to Kyle and say, "Hey, Kyle, follow up on this." And so, just very basic workflow things helped a lot to sort of reduce the complexity of managing Twitter accounts. Had
this ever been done before?
I think the Twitter ecosystem, when we started working in it, was just barely evolved to the point that people were beginning to realize that this was a problem. And so there were a couple other companies that were looking at the similar issue at the same time. I think we were probably the first out on the market, although that's one of those things where, like, the market was so blurry and tiny at that time that it's really hard to tell. But we were very early. Thanks to some great relationships that we had a lot of very early brand usage from companies like Ford and Microsoft and JetBlue, and that brand recognition really helped to drive our product forward, because we were able to we worked very closely. We actually created this concept called the CoTweet cohorts, where we got a bunch of sort of influential tech tech and social media types who were working at these large brands, and we got them on a phone call once a month, and they acted to sort of help us steer the product in the right direction. So we were very early, and we had the right relationships to be there and to make the right connections.
You said you quit your job, start this venture with the clothes, the T-shirt thing. Which, by the way, did that have a name?
It was called What You Wearin'.
What You Wearin'.
Yeah. Again, not a great name, regrettable, not in use.
It's better than Twan Smith, but so,
hey, let's not get personal, man.
So what was that like? You're quitting your job. Like, what are the emotions and the thoughts going through your head at this point when you're quitting your job, your income source, and to start on something new may or may not be successful, or was there already a certain level of success that you felt confident in it?
I mean, I was working. It was funny. I was working for a company that I really liked working for, with people that I really liked working with. I think for me, it comes down to wanting to, like, I ultimately want to build the things that are in my head, and I can't do that when I'm working for somebody else. And so I figured, I had a bunch of contracting work lined up, and I figured, worst case scenario, I just do contracting work and eventually move back to another company. The way it played out, though, was the projects I was working on between What You Wearin' and CoTweet. Ultimately, I ended up not being able to take any more contracting work. And so I went further and further and further into debt. I moved home with my parents, got rid of a lot of stuff, borrowed money from my grandparents, all of this to just kind of stay afloat and try and get to the point where we were getting funding or revenue or both.
How long did it take for that to kick in?
We our first line of code for CoTweet was sometime in the middle of September of 2008, and we demoed CoTweet at the New York Tech Meetup in January of 2009, and continued our fundraise through the spring of 2009, and we closed we raised $1.1 million from a couple different VC firms in July of 2009.
So it didn't take long compared to some people who take a really long time to start business.
Yeah, it worked. I think, again, it had a lot to do with being able to be in the right place at the right time. We had a product that was meeting people's needs as they were discovering they had those needs. And then the venture market was looking for ways to figure out how to be in this space.
So you raised the $1.1 million. So what was the next thing you did with that?
We bought a bouncy castle. And really, the focus was on building a team to help us figure out what the product was and what the business model was. I think somebody described early stage businesses that sort of startup phase that's in the news a lot right now. It's a temporary structure that's designed to help you find the business model. And so, we raised that money, and the objective wasn't necessarily to get to the point where we were making that much money a month or something like that, right? The goal was to find a market. Like, we were dealing with large enterprises who had these social media needs, and we knew that they were capable of paying money for software because they do that a lot. So the question was like, well, what's the tool that we need to build that's going to get them to pull out their checkbooks and buy it? And so that's what we did. We did that for roughly 9 months. In $1.1 million sounds like a lot of money. It goes very, very, very quickly when you have to hire expensive engineers, and sort of the cost of doing business here. And in the space where you're traveling from event to event to event to talk about things, turns out to be very high. And so we were coming to the end of those funds, and so we during that time we had demonstrated that people were willing to buy. We had a paid clientele, and so we were looking at raising another round of financing, probably a lot more money, or at just about the same time that we took funding, we started realizing that we shared a lot of clients with a company called ExactTarget, which is based in Indianapolis. They're a very, very large email service provider, and now expanding well beyond email. And we started having conversations with them because we were looking at, are there ways that we can sort of bundle our products together, because they have a very large and well-established sales force. And as time went on, we started to realize that they had massive expertise in email, and they were looking to expand into social. And from their perspective, it was either to try and build it themselves, and they were a little late to the game, or they could buy something that was a market leader, and they saw us as a market leader in that space. And so our options looked like raise a bunch more money and try and build a business machine to support the product that we've built, and then risk that somebody is going to buy us for something, in excess of the number that we raised, or we can sell it to ExactTarget. And ExactTarget put forward a really fantastic offer, and the organization. I mean, I think the first time they presented the offer to us, we walked away, and there was a discussion as to whether they were trying to scam us somehow, because it just like everything looked too good, and they've been just fantastic people to work with all the way through, and so ultimately we chose to go with them rather than raise another round. So we sold the company to them in the spring, what was it, March of 2010, so like 18 months ago.
Well, we're going to head to break now, and when we come back, we're going to wrap up our conversation about CoTweet and learn a little bit more about Aaron. Lancast is proud to be sponsored this episode by Lapp Structures.
Lapp Structures are premier builders of custom sheds and other outbuildings, and you can find them in Pleasant, New Holland, PA.
One of the things Lapp Structures is known for is their ability to put your structure wherever you need it. Whether that be a rural open backyard or a close-quarter city yard, they've got a way to get it done.
So if you're thinking about more storage space, some place for your outdoor supplies, or a garage for that new car, Lapp Structures has got you covered.
If you'd like to learn more about Lapp Structures, you can visit thelancast.com and click on their banner at the top of the page. Also, if you mention to Linda that you heard this ad, you'll get a free ramp with your structure. And we're back with Aaron Gotwalt. Aaron, we've gotten to the point in the story where you've sold CoTweet. Did you continue to work on the project, or did you just take that time and step back?
Yeah, so when they acquired us, we were 7 people. I presume that their janitorial staff was larger than us, and their office IT department was larger than us. At the time we were acquired, I think they were around 700 people. So what they were buying wasn't just a head count. What they were interested in was the product and the team. And so if we had left at the moment that we sold the company, they wouldn't have gotten a whole lot out of it. I mean, we had this product, but what they saw was the future of the product, and so what they wanted us to do was to build that, and then for their business machine to be able to sell it more. So I stayed on for about until about 3 weeks ago, and along with Kyle, my business partner, Jesse Engel, our CEO, has actually stayed on. He's now VP of Social for ExactTarget. So our interest was in making sure that they got what they paid for out of the deal, but also we saw a lot of potential for the product that we wouldn't be able to see realized unless we worked with them. And so, in these last 18 months, we've seen tremendous growth in the product, tremendous growth in the market for it, and sales growth. And so it's been really exciting. In addition, we built this, they built out a huge office for us in downtown Soma in San Francisco, which is kind of the epicenter of startups in San Francisco. And, so we had a new office, and we grew, in the last year, we grew from, I think, 7 to, we're now 26 or 28, maybe even 30. So the organization's got a lot larger.
You said the cost of doing business where you are, you're in San Francisco. What was the initial reason for San Francisco? Was that because that's where the business that purchased you was, or what was the initial reason for why San Francisco?
Oh, so it's a pretty straightforward question. I mean, there are plenty of tech startups that operate in Elizabethtown and Lancaster and Philly and New York and all these places on the East Coast. For us, building a product that was so intimately tied to initially just the Twitter ecosystem, but then expanding into Facebook, for us it was very important to be here and to see these companies not just as organizations that we sent emails back and forth to, but as people that we interacted with on a regular basis outside the bounds of work. And so for us, it was very being relational and going beyond just like trying to get them to do stuff for us, I think was a real key to our success. We know people, we started working with Twitter when they were like 20 people, and they're now like, I don't know, 500 or 600 or so. And the people that we knew when we first started working with them are people who are now, running entire departments there. And so those relationships have been really key to our success.
I'd like to switch the conversation a little bit to something maybe some people might know about you, some people might not. Depends on if they keep up on the current events here. But you started a little thing called Poopin' Day.
Yeah, so this is one of those ideas that sounds great when it's like 3 a.m. and you've been drinking with friends for a long time. And you write it on your arm, and then you wake up in the morning and you're like, that is the dumbest idea ever. And then we did it. The concept, if you've ever had immature friends, and I have, you'll find that somebody that has had their Facebook wall or their Twitter status updated to the word poopin'. It's sort of innocuous. It's funny. It's a little bit of oversharing. And odds are they didn't do it. It's just sort of like a funny, meaningless internet thing. You're not likely to lose friends over this kind of thing, but it's sort of embarrassing. But it's meaningless. And then I've got these friends in water and sanitation, people who work for organizations like Charity Water and Water.org, who are doing really, really fantastic work in sanitation where you're having to deal with poop all the time. When you're talking about, Charity Water does a lot of stuff related to clean water, and so they drill wells and they take pictures of cute children dancing in clean water. It's a great story. It's very easy to talk about, right? Because it's clean and clear, and you've got cute kids. When you're talking about sanitation, though, you're talking about like trying to keep the poop out of the water, right? It's not a sexy story. It's hard to talk about. For as advanced a society as we live in, we still don't talk about these things easily. This is I was in Japan a couple months ago, and we were having these discussions about like there are these devices that some bathrooms have that make a sound while you're in them, so that other people won't hear you doing your business. And so we don't talk about poop very easily. And so what I thought was, we take this entirely silly and stupid meme that happens on the internet, and we try and tie it into an awareness campaign for sanitation work in Africa and beyond. And so we partnered with Water.org, some really, really fantastic people there doing some really smart things, as well as Give Love, which is Patricia Arquette's nonprofit that initially she started working on doing shelter post-earthquake shelter in Haiti, but it's transitioned to doing dry latrines and sort of building sanitation equipment for the developing world. So we partnered with them. We launched it at South by Southwest in last year, and the idea was that you could sign up online, and your Twitter account or your Facebook account would be randomly poopined at some point, where your status would get changed to poopin', which is exactly what happens when some jerk gets your phone and updates your status. So we thought you're signing up for something that already happens, but then in addition we had links going back to World Poopin' Day, and we had some corporate sponsorship. We had a call to give. We were able to do a mobile give, giving by text. So you text World Poopin' Day to a number, and it would donate to these 2 charities automatically. And we just had an awesome time. And I think it was a great start to an awareness campaign. I think sanitation is one of those things that needs innovative thinking about how to message about it. It's hard to talk about. It's always going to be hard to talk about. And I think when you get people smiling a little bit about something that's sort of embarrassing but innocuous, it makes it easier to talk about. And that was the whole point of World Poopin' Day. And it was a lot of fun.
I'll have since I found out about World Poopin' Day, my friend Ray has updated my Twitter status 3 or 4 times to say poopin', because he heard about it from World Poopin' Day, and it's really annoying.
Shouldn't leave your stuff open, Keith.
I know.
Start doing it.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, you should close the door.
now that you've sold the company, you said you were done working there as of 3 weeks ago, I believe you said.
Yeah.
What's next? You're retired now. What are the next plans? What are you planning on doing? I
think the retirement is a little bit of a. I'm not really retired. I've actually been sort of thinking a bunch about what I want to do next. I'm trying not to do anything rashly. I can't be unemployed for forever, but I can afford to take a little bit of a break here and try and think and relax. I've been very married to my job for the last 3 years. It's been for a lot of it was 6 or 7 days a week and 12 to 14 hours a day. It was not, I think you read the news and you get these sort of luxurious or idealized stories about how startup life is all about drinking beer and playing foosball and Xbox every day in the office. It's a lot of work and it's a lot of grind. And I didn't take a vacation that entire time. Really, everywhere I've been, with the exception of going on runs for the last 3 years, I've had my phone within probably 20 feet of me everywhere all the time, and taking phone calls at all hours of the night to fix all sorts of things. So I feel like I've got a bunch of vacation days saved up, and I'm trying to take them. I'm buying a house in San Francisco. I plan on staying out here, and so that's just the mechanics of doing that are kind of. It forces you to slow down and sign paperwork and do those sorts of things. Beyond that, then I'm going to Africa in early September, and I'm going to be climbing Kilimanjaro with some of my best friends, and hopefully seeing a little bit of the Rift Valley too. I grew up. Did you watch those? There were these like nature specials. I think it was Nature on PBS growing up, and they would talk about the Great Rift Valley, and they'd have like the zebras crumbling along the valley, and then you'd have this voiceover, and you'd be like the great zebra, coming across the plain.
You're going to do that?
Yeah, so I'm going to do that. Yeah, because getting there is really 2/3 the battle, because I'm planning on staying with friends anyway, so it's once you're there, it's pretty easy to stay there.
Do you have any more ideas that you're thinking of pursuing when you're done with your much needed vacation?
I'll say broadly, I'm interested in solving actual problems. I feel like a lot of startups that exist, especially out here, are focused on making us smarter consumers, whatever that means. What they're really trying to do is get you to pay more money for something somewhere, or subject you to more advertising for something. And I don't think that those, while they may be money making opportunities, they're not necessarily solving a real problem. I mean, I think there are real problems that we face today. I think like sanitation is a real problem, right? I mean, it may not be a real problem in your house or your office because you've got running water and flushing toilets, but that's a real problem. I think unemployment is a real problem. That's something I think there's this funny disconnect where there aren't enough software engineers in the world to fulfill the needs of the tech industry in San Francisco right now, and yet, nationally, internationally, unemployment is really at the root of a lot of the problems that we're seeing in the sort of the macroeconomic systems. And I'm interested in participating in building things that might have a chance to really address some of these real world problems. So I don't know, but I mean, I think that's sort of the broad picture I'm thinking about.
Well, before we say goodbye, because we know you need to get going, I'd like to ask for 2 really short lists from you. If you could list the 3 things that were a culture shock for you moving to San Francisco, and then the 3 things that you think Lancaster should learn from San Francisco.
Okay, San Francisco is not warm. Is almost never warm. It's usually gray and cold. That was shocking. So if you're going to be a tourist and come to San Francisco, don't wear shorts. It's a bad idea. This is not. We have palm trees, yes, but it's cold. Culture shock. You come from the East Coast, you think California is this crazy, place full of weird pagan hippies or something. Not that there's anything wrong with that, in case there are pagan hippies listening. I think San Francisco is a kind of town where you can find whatever you want and whatever you're looking for. Like, there's a lot of everything here. I think it may be the best city in the world to eat, and so I do a lot of that. But I don't know. I don't think I had culture shock. I feel like in some ways this is the city I was born to live in. So let's see, things that Lancaster can learn from San Francisco. That's an interesting question. I think there's a lot of latitude given for people and their self-expression in this town, and I think that that it's a dangerous thing that can go horribly, horribly wrong. But more often than not, it turns out okay. And I think that that acceptance of people and their crazy ideas, and they may be totally crazy. I mean, this town is full of crazy people, but that acceptance of people and their crazy ideas also, I think, the tech industry is full of people with crazy ideas, and so you have to have a tolerance for thinking far outside the box, and then the willingness to kind of like shoehorn people back into the box when it's appropriate. But that thinking and that flexibility is key.
Well, we want to thank you a lot for taking the time to talk with us today. If people want to find out more about you and the things you've done, where can they go to find that?
I'm on Twitter as Gotwalt, Gotwalt, and I'm pretty findable as Aaron Gotwalt if you use that Google thing.
Google. I think I heard of it.
I don't know.
Yeah, it's like the new Alta Vista.
It's like a startup.
The new Alta Vista.
Yeah. It's like a little better, I think.
Well, Aaron, thanks again, and really appreciate you giving us your time.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
We hope you've been enjoying the Lancast.
This episode was produced by myself, David Moulton, and our production intern, Robert Filer, with show notes by Keith and Lauren Slesser.
All pertinent links to this episode can be found in the show notes at thelancast.com.
If you specifically liked this episode, we ask that you consider making a donation.
Every little bit helps. Even $1 a show can keep us going.
If you'd like to help support us, you can do so by going to thelancast.com/donate.
And don't forget to subscribe in iTunes and tell a friend about the show.
So, for the Lancast, I'm David Moulton.
And I'm Keith Slesser.
Asking, are you in the cast?